Welcome back to the Speak Your Truth podcast. I am Jelani Julius, and we are SYT. This is a podcast about people with big ideas and dreamers who have taken the risk to actually create the things that they dream about. And we've made it through 6 episodes thus far, half a year of content. And for episode 7, we're switching it up. Today, we're going to interview a guest who hasn't started their big idea yet, but they're dreaming, they're ideating. And we're going to experiment together just to see if we can help them think through the idea, maybe attract some people, like-minded individuals who are inspired by the idea, who want to see this in the world. You know, this is an opportunity to practice a little bit of energy magic, right? Working together. So I'm excited to bring in my guest today. Their name is Hann McEwen. They are an intimacy coordinator out in LA, as well as a sexuality educator. Everybody say hi to Hann. Hann?
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are officially the guest from the furthest location I've had. I've had people from Georgia. I've had people from New York, and now LA. This is great.
Coming from the West.
So you are an intimacy coordinator and a sexuality educator out in LA, but you didn't start off there. So why don't we open up our conversation just explaining how you got to those 2 industries in particular, and then we'll transition to talking about your big idea.
For sure. So we're going to go all the way back to 2017. I was going to Temple University to get my BFA in screenwriting. And I was working with an organization called the University Community Collaborative. And while there, I started off as a political educator. So we would actually go to different schools, recruit like high school students, and we would teach them about politics. So we'll be like, this is what classism is. This is
introduction to woke culture.
You know? And then at that same organization, they did consent workshops when they would actually go into different schools and they would talk about consent culture and try to implement consent culture and talk about the legalities and ethics behind consent and what consent is. And they were like, we have a couple facilitators leaving and we don't have enough facilitators to do the consent workshop. Would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, I would be interested. And the more I did the consent workshops, the more I was like, oh, this is something I'm actually really passionate about.
What made you passionate about it?
I think what made me passionate about it is that I never understood consent with all of the legal parts that come along with it, with all the ethics that come along with it. You know, more often than not, we're always taught no means no.
Right.
And no means no is not the full spectrum of consent. No means no is not enough. You know, no means no and more for consent. And that's what really attracted me to it, of like, it does go beyond no means no. And it gave me words to explain how it goes beyond no means no.
How did that impact the young people you were working with? Like them getting this broader understanding of consent?
I think it really helped with them understanding nuance, and it gave them like an introduction to nuance. Because then, of course, it will always end up being the questions of, okay, but what if both people are drunk? And it's like, if both people are drunk, legally, neither one of them can consent. You know, also, is it possible to have an enjoyable sexual experience while both people are drunk and nobody like walks away with a lifelong filled with trauma? Yes, that is a possibility. Is it also possible for a drunk driver to get behind the wheel of a car and not get into a car accident?
Okay, yeah.
That's also a possibility, right? Does that mean that someone who is drunk driving should drunk drive every time that they're drunk? No.
Wow, that's a powerful metaphor. Like I was with you, but then I felt it. I was like, oh, this is bad. Oh my god, my college years. What was I doing? I did a lot of drunk driving in college.
So it's like, you know, it finally got them to understand that nuance, to see that nuance. Because then also, you can also have drunk, both people be drunk, and y'all have perfectly enjoyable and fun sex, which is completely possible. But then a lot of people don't think about, have y'all talked about having drunk sex or having intoxicated sex while sober? You know, or are you only having drunk sex and that's the first time you're meeting somebody? What are the...
Right.
What is the situation to this? And a lot of young people don't always think about that. They always think about things as black and white because in school, that's what you're taught. You're taught black and white. You're not talked about complexities, and you're not supposed to be.
I think that's true for adults. I think everybody wants to act like there's a clearly defined wrong and right way of being, and a lot of it's cultural and subjective, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did that get you to where you are today? What was the bridge?
So because I was studying screenwriting, so I was in the film school and I was doing the consent workshops, I remember talking to one of my professors about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I do consent workshops and so on and so forth. And they're like, have you thought about intimacy coordinating? And I was like, oh, what's that? And, you know, intimacy coordinating, you're advocating for an actor's consent on set or in theater. You're advocating for what can be done to their body, right?
And I feel like this is like a touchy subject. Like, have you ever watched the show The Idol?
You told me about it. Okay.
Well, I mean, the first episode is them trying to get the intimacy coordinator on set, and they're trying to prevent something from happening that was not agreed upon. And everybody basically bullies the intimacy coordinator and kind of convinces them to leave. And I wondered if that's true to like what it's like in LA on movie sets, where it's like the intimacy coordinator is like is a disruptive force to people who are trying to do something a certain kind of way.
So it all depends on who asks for the intimacy coordinator. I've been on a set where the person who asked for me to be the intimacy coordinator was a director and producer. And they're like, I just want my actors to feel safe.
That's good.
And yeah, that was a great environment. And then you go into other environments and they're like, you are here for legal reasons only.
To stop me from committing a crime.
You know?
Or stop us from getting sued.
And that's not as fun. And then sometimes they're like, yeah, we really want you here. You have 15 minutes. The actors have never met before and they're about to have their clothes off. Choreograph away. And things are moving around on set. You don't really get time to do it. And then it just becomes a thing of like, don't touch that. And then, you know, it's not as fun, but still enjoyable. And you're making sure that people are okay.
So you're doing that work and it came directly out of this early education experience you had working with young people. So they're connected. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And now that intimacy coordinating has evolved to a new passion or a return passion to sexuality education. And so let's start there. Why sexuality education and not sex education? Because in my mind, you know, that's how I've heard it referred to, but you made a choice to say specifically sexuality education.
Yeah. A lot of reasons of why people are moving to saying sexuality educators instead of sex educators. It's because even like when we think of sex ed now, it's very much reduced to body parts. It's very much reduced to like some teacher who's like, I'd rather do anything else, but it's a state requirement. So I'm going to teach sex ed, being like, this is the penis, this is the vagina. This is where babies come from. When in reality,
good luck, guys.
Best of luck. But in reality, you know, sex is so much more than that, right? And sexuality is so much more than that. It's not just reproduction. It's not just your sexual health. It's also like about sexualization. It's about the feelings you have about your own body. It's about your identity. It's about how you relate to others and your intimacy with others.
I find that so interesting because I feel like when I grew up in high school, it was like the people at church wanted to make sex this higher spiritual entity. And therefore, if you were not ready for it and you shouldn't do it, you should abstain. And the sex educators that were in our schools were trying to like demystify and kind of pull it down to everyday human activity that didn't need to be on a pedestal as a way to encourage us to be safe. So it's kind of cool to see, like, 20 years later, it's like a marrying of those two things where it can be both something that's way more than just reproductive and pleasure. It has a lot of hooks to identity. But then also does not necessarily put so far on a pedestal where it's like you're a bad person because you want to do these things. Does that sound right to you?
It does. There's actually an organization for this called Our Whole Lives, the OWL curriculum. And it's a religious-based sex ed class that offers sex ed classes from the ages, I think from like pre-K, so from the time someone's 5, all the way up through somebody who is a senior in their 60s. And it's like comprehensive sexuality education.
So they have sexuality education for everybody from high schoolers to senior citizens.
And like little ones.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sex is different from when you're 65 compared to when you're like 20.
I just think like we act like people can't change. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I was thinking in my head of like all like the memes I see on social media about like senior citizens in different like settings exploring like kinks and other things, and it's like a thing in Florida. And it's just funny to me. It's like like they lived their whole life kind of like this way, and now they get to be like in another way. And so there are these classes for them that help them navigate that space because they need it too.
Yeah,
they're having some first time experiences too. Interesting. So you have these two things. You started off as a screenwriter, and you still write, but that passion for screenwriting evolved into intimacy coordinating and a desire to protect the safety of everybody on set so that we can make art in a way that does not harm, which I think is really important. And then that also led to a return to sexuality educating that's a little bit broader than maybe the youth work you were doing that was just focused on consent. And now you've kind of expanded out. So where are you at today, and what are the things you're educating on now?
So I am a sexuality educator, specifically a sexuality educator facilitator with a group called More Than Sex Ed. They're a 501.3C nonprofit.
501c3?
501c3, thank you. 501c3 nonprofit. And they provide comprehensive and inclusive sexuality education, and which makes me feel really good. So for the viewers at home, I am queer. I am a Black queer femme. And it's really, really empowering to be in those spaces and get to like give students sex ed that is more inclusive. And we're not just saying, oh, this is for a boy's body or this is for a girl's body. We say this is for a vulva having body and this is for a penis having body. This is what happens in a sperm producing body. This is what happens in an egg producing body or a ovarian body, right? And that's really nice.
Why is that nice? 'Cause I didn't grow up like that, so I need a little a little hand holding.
Right.
Not more so because I don't see the world the way you do, but I'm open to it. So why is that nice? What is that accomplishing that the old way didn't accomplish? What are we gaining as a people from that perspective?
So I'll do a little test with you. Do you know what the epididymis is?
No. Well, no. Okay, no. I'm gonna say no. I have an idea, but I'm gonna say no. 'Cause I don't actually know.
So the epididymis is actually where the sperms go from the testicle to actually start to mature. And that's when sperm becomes sperm as we know it, right? And that's happening in your body. Yet most people with sperm producing bodies don't understand that. But then and no one has ever like broken it down in that way. Usually what happens is they will just say that is a man's body. And we just assume, oh, that's a man's body, so that means that there's a penis. And we only think about the penis and we don't think about anything else. But when we say sperm producing body, then it actually breaks it down to the medical parts.
Just the factual things.
Like the factual
and leaves out the societal things about what it means to be this or that. It leaves space for people to define themselves for themselves.
Especially because, once again, even if we say a woman's body instead of a body with ovaries or a body with a vagina, right? There are so many grown adults who don't know that women don't pee out of their vaginas. They have no idea. They're like, how do tampons work? How do you go to the bathroom with a tampon? And it's like, why do you think it's interferes? But it's because of how we're just like, oh, so a woman has this body, so we assume that we have this. But we're like, oh, a body with ovaries has this anatomy system. It makes it very easy to actually understand how this body is. It takes away that assumption.
Right. It takes away the assumptions. It makes things more specific. And specificity adds a lot of value to life, right? So how does this relate to why you're here today and the big idea you want to talk about and kind of peruse, with our audience? We're going to play a little game or a little activity.
Okay, there's a game.
It's not a game. We talked about it before. Don't be so surprised.
Okay.
But before you, I'm going to challenge you to try to succinctly say your big idea. A big idea can be communicated as one sentence. It should communicate your unique perspective on the way the world is versus the way the world could be. And it should have some stakes to it, right? Like it should be an opinion. Somebody should hear your big idea and they should either be like, oh my God, I love it, I'm here for it, or they go like, no, and they're resistant. That's how you know you have something, because it causes people to make a choice. So let's try.
Okay, let's try it.
Your big idea in one sentence.
It is dangerous not to have more sex positive places for Black and brown people.
Ooh, okay. It is dangerous to not have more sex positive places for Black and brown people.
Yes.
Wow. Why is that dangerous?
It's dangerous because if there aren't more sex positive places for Black and brown people in their own communities, that means they have to travel to other areas where they might be ostracized. They might be singled as the odd ones out. And it makes it feel like, oh, what I am into is counter to my culture and counter to
like I have to choose.
how people.
I can either be a Black person, or I can be a person who has these particular, sexual identity.
Either I could be Black or I could be kinky, but I can't be the same thing in the same space. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. So exactly it's dangerous for Black people to not have access to safe sex positive places is a starting point. What does that look like in the world for you? Like, if money is not an issue, if you don't have to worry about resources, if you could just create the thing that will create the spaces you want, what are you looking to create?
So my biggest dream is I would be thriving as an intimacy coordinator and as a sexuality educator. And as I am thriving in all of those roles, I'll start to open up sex shops. And I will want my sex shops to be 2-tiered, right? And the reason why I want them to be 2-tiered is because at the bottom, we have all of our products, everything you can purchase from and play with and be interested in. And then at the top level are classroom spaces that invite people to actually hey, if you buy a ticket to the class or if you come to the class, not only do you get a discount on some of the products downstairs, but now you also get to learn this part of your sex life that you've been curious about. And I want to purposely open them in Black and brown areas. There is no reason why the South Side of Chicago is as big as it is, and there's only a sex shop in Hyde Park, And
so in preparation for this interview, I went there, and it's not necessarily a comprehensive sex shop either. It's a small store, compared to if you go to a bigger store in the suburbs, like a Lover's Lane, where they have clothing and all kinds of other stuff, or I went and visited the Hustler store on North Avenue, and there's 2 floors, and they have a lot of stuff there. And it was so when we talked about this before in preparing, I went and looked around, and I see what you mean. If you are interested in these things, there's no safe place on the South Side to really learn or take classes or figure things out that I know of that I could find with a quick Google search.
And that's really, it's tough, right? Because if most of the places are up north and I have to travel far, now it's even an issue of access. Even if there is something that I'm interested in, there's no way I could possibly access it. And that's not fair, right? So my dream would be able to open up those sex shops and have them exclusively be on the South and West sides in Black and brown areas. And I want them to have classes of what does sex look like after 65? Oh, you want to learn how to use a strap-on? You want the tips of it? Come to the strap-on class. If you want to be a throat goat, come to the throat goat class. Whatever you want it to be. And
I think that's interesting too, because then you could brand it for the culture. I don't know if the Hustler store on North Avenue is having a throat goat class. I don't know if they're marketing it like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're marketing it like that.
Yeah.
But on Instagram, you see these conversations happening. You see these conversations happening on podcasts or memes or other things, but they're still taboo. They're still often a little subset. How far reaching do you think the impact of this is? Do you think that there's an audience for these things, for the store?
I absolutely think that there's an audience.
What makes you think that? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing that says there's a need here that's untapped?
So I have also worked in a sex shop. Worked in a sex shop for 2 years.
In Chicago?
No, in LA.
In LA.
And the sex shop I worked at in LA was near the airport. It was a luxury sex shop,
golden dildos and everything.
It looked like an Apple store.
Okay.
It looked like to give you it looked like an Apple store. I wish we had golden dildos.
That would have been fun.
I think that would have been fun. But it was a luxury ritzy sex shop. And every single time a Black person came in, I could literally see the relief on their face when they saw me. And there were multiple Black people who worked at my store. So like there were so many Black people who worked at the store that we would always get the question asked of like, is this a Black owned business? And we're like, no, we just Black and we work here. It's not a Black owned business. At one point at the store, we also sold shoes for dancers. They were called Bleezers. And we would have people try on the shoes. And I was helping this one girl and she looked at me. She was like, you're the first Black person I've ever seen in a sex shop. It's usually like a white girl with colored hair who I see working at sex shops. I've never seen a Black person work at a sex shop. And I would get that all the time. I would get that constantly. And it's like, we constantly have Black customers. I constantly see them coming in here. And they would be traveling from like Watts. They'll be traveling from Compton. They'd be traveling from all over to come to this store because they're like, this is the closest store I could find to me. And it's like, because there's none in their area.
So what does it take to open one of these stores? Like you haven't done this yet, right? So if we just ran through some of the questions, what do you need to be able to do these things? What are the things that will help you? Part of the reason we want to talk about these things, if you can clearly articulate your needs, then maybe people hearing them, there might be people who know, people who say, oh, I know how to do that, or I care about this and I would like to be a part of it. So what are the kind of things as you begin this journey of like bringing this into fruition, right? Well, you haven't started yet, right?
Yeah, I haven't started yet.
And that's what today's episode is all about. This is a first step, right? Taking the courage to talk about something you think about passionately. You care about this and speaking it into existence. Like we're creating a space between the two of us to exchange ideas. And then hopefully there's a few thousand more people who will do that. Right. So what are the things you think you need? What are the questions that you don't have answered yet? That you like, if anybody could help you with, you'd be like, please, if you know how to do this, tell me.
I think the first part is just space, right? Because I think if we just start with having a space where we can just even have like a discussion and we start there, right? Where's a space that we can literally start? And when I say space, I mean literally a floor and some chairs.
So you're starting off with how to start the workshop piece.
Yeah.
I want to have our conversation focus on the end goal.
Oh,
so
okay.
your 2-tiered store.
Yeah.
We traveled, 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes to the future.
Okay.
And we are in which neighborhood in Chicago?
Oh man, there's so many.
Pick the one that you.
I'm gonna say Chatham.
All right. So we're in Chatham.
Okay.
And we found a 2-story building, and it's gonna be the grand opening of what's your sex shop called? First thing that comes to mind from your gut, just say it. Don't overthink it. You can change it later. You can change it later. There's no risk here.
Whips and Things.
Whoops and Things.
Whips and Things.
Whips and Things opens up on 79th Street.
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds great.
Yes, it sounds great. Whips and Things opens on 79th Street, right? And it's stocked on the first floor with all the products and things. You have your workshop space upstairs. So everything kind of came to fruition. What does it take to get you there? What do you need to know? So in terms of, so you need to know something about commercial real estate.
Yeah.
How do you rent that kind of space? What does it cost? You need to know what kind of business, like how much you need to sell in order to afford that space. That's a starting place you need help with. What other things do you think that you don't know today beyond, like you know what to do in Whips and Things, but you don't yet know how to make whips and things? What else do you want to know?
Oh, I would definitely need someone with a business mind, right? Of like looking at the business models of other like sex shops and other businesses like that, and understanding like the business of that. Distribution.
Distribution of what?
Toys.
Oh, right. Products. Yes.
Products. Distribution. No idea how that works either. So I wouldn't understand distribution. We're going to frame
the question. So we need someone who understands the distribution of sex toys and products related to kinks or sex shops. So if they're listening and they're excited about the idea of creating safe, sex-positive spaces for Black and brown people, starting off in Chicago, but anywhere we are, they should reach out to you. That's kind of what we're trying to get here, right?
Yeah.
Like let's just keep talking these people into existence because they're out there, right? Like, we're making friends.
Somebody knows.
We are making friends on this podcast. So if you know that industry,
okay,
we want to talk to them. If they know anything about renting a commercial real estate place, what does it look like? What do you need? Because even if you're not ready yet, it would be helpful to know what it takes. Because now, to your point earlier about like why we say semen producing body versus ovum producing body and these things, specificity adds a lot of power and agency. The more specific this dream gets, the more real it gets. Right now, it's broad. It's just the emotions of it, the high idea. Today, we're going to just kind of take some baby steps for saying, what are the concrete things I need?
I think I would also need a network of sexuality educators.
Network of sexuality educators.
Yeah.
Who are passionate about creating safe, sex-positive spaces for Black and brown people. Are you out there?
Yes.
Are they out there?
Yeah.
There we go.
They are.
So so we want to connect with those people and have them do what?
I want us to be able to work together in the shop to form the shop into the image that we want it to be. Right? If we want it to be a place to make sure that people who are plus size also can have their lingerie and take their classes, and how you can have sex with a plus size body and still be comfortable in different positions you can do in different products you can buy to assist with that. I want those sexuality educators in the space. If they are sexuality educators that are really passionate about how do you have sex with disability, and these are all like the ergonomic toys you can buy and ergonomic products you can buy so that you can have sex with a disability, and what does sex with a disability look like, I want those sexuality educators there as well. I think I want sexuality educators who are, I guess, specialized would be the word, or like the more specific they are in their sexuality education, in their journeys. I want them there, right? And I want them to contribute to the business. What's the name of the...
Whips and things?
Not whips and things. It's like a specific word I'm looking for. It starts with a C, and it's when everybody puts in, and then everyone enjoys the output of it. Collective. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So
cheers.
You want a collective?
Yes, I want a collective. I want a collective of. I'm going to put this back down. I want a collective.
It's okay.
I'm talking. I want a collective of sexuality educators at the base of it. I want them to be involved in the business as well. Because I know that they're going to understand the business.
Ooh, what does that look like? So, like, are these people owners of the business? Do they have a stake in the business? Like, what does that look like? Are you redefining capitalism here and making something that's a little bit more? I mean, there's the point. Dream it up. Yeah. Like, it could be whatever you want it to be.
I would want them to have a stake in the business, or I want them to have some type of investment in it, to make it sure that it's the way that we want it to be. I don't want it to be like a lot of other sex shops where it's like, we are just here to sell them the toys.
Make our money.
Selling toys, make our money. There are no refunds or exchanges.
And I'll tell you that like business does well when you have more to it than just the product. The product is a beginning point, but like all the largest businesses have a tie to higher values.
Yeah.
And so this sex shop sounds like it has higher values around community, around openness and identity, right? Acceptance, and allowing people to be themselves. The idea that pleasure can be for a wider audience than people think. Like when you described the different body types and conditions that people don't know how to do these things, So I think there's clearly values that are inspiring this work, that can make a space more than just the toys, right?
Right. There is an online sex shop that is Black owned and queer owned that I really admire. That's called NB.
Spell it.
ENBY.
ENBY.
NB.
NB.
And the website name is shopnb.com.
Shopnb.com.
Yeah. And they do a really amazing work. And if there was any way I could be connected to the people there to ask them, like, how did you model this business? How did you come up with this concept, so on and so forth? They would be good to talk to too if there's a reason why they don't have a retail space. Yeah. Because retail business is hard in America right now. It's hard in America. Brick and mortar's hard.
And I think even as we're talking, there might be a need for your organization to be, you're seeing this a lot more in the marketplace where people are building nonprofits and for-profit entities that work together. So like the store part of this space is a for-profit entity where you sell the products, you make a profit, that works. But the upstairs community space could be a nonprofit where now you have access to being able to receive donations and tax-free donations and be able to get grants. And maybe together they kind of synergize. I know some folks on the West Side are doing this around residential real estate development. where there's a nonprofit side and a for-profit side building the building and constructing it. There's a nonprofit side that's doing the advocacy work around the needs of the residents and stuff. And they work together and they help each other sustain. You have access to a wider mix of equity. So maybe Whips and Things should be thought of as having both.
Yeah.
You know, a nonprofit side that does the educating, that does the advocacy work, you know, that does the community building, and a for-profit side that sells the products.
I know that you're not a sexuality educator, but you can get a stake in it.
I don't want to stake in this. I'm not against it. It's just, you know, I think a large part of our work on this podcast, and one thing we talk about a lot, is energy. And I think I'm a very spiritual, mystical kind of person. But energy is, you know, it's physics, it's science, right? And I think, like, you know, we all produce so much energy in our physical body, and we have so much energy that we can expend in the world. And so, you know, I can't do everything. You know, you should do this because this is where your energy is aligned, and it seems to be restorative. You seem to get energy from this conversation. You seem to get energy from thinking about it. I don't. It's interesting. It's interesting to me. It's interesting to me. You know,
that's fair.
I want to support it, but like, I want to be on stage. I want to be in movies. You know, I want to act. That's like the energy thing that produces a lot of passion for me. But I also, I want this. I like talking with people who have big ideas. So let's, are there any other questions of people you need to attract? And that's why we're talking about the people, because the last guest I had on, Janice Newsom from Labs, or hairwithoutharm.com, she talked a lot about how it took hundreds of people supporting her to go over a 7-year period from her first plant-based hair product, which was literally leaves and twigs she cut from outside, to like what she has now that, you know, beauticians are starting to braid into people's hair. And I view that as energy work, because every time you add somebody in, there's more energy to produce the ideas. So our conversation today is you have the high level vision for a movement, but now you're getting to share that vision because you need other people to bring their energy, their talents, their gifts to solve their own problems, you know? And when you have both, that's how things grow. I was at a film screening recently for the, not the Folded Mat Project, it's Selling Inequality. It was a documentary that covered it was a documentary that covered the Selling Inequality art project in Inglewood, where they went through and they found the houses that were stolen from Black people and put, like, you know, literal signs that communicated what happened to the family that was originally there. But during the presentation, the director, Tanika, had all these people who came up and just talked about how they helped. The Chicago Bungalow Association helped by rebuilding some of these people's homes. There was a sociology professor that helped her with the data. It's just like the art was the original idea of this one person, but everybody had a role. And so that's what today's conversation is about. And hoping that these conversations in the future can be about. Let people know what kind of people you need to join the movement, and maybe you can start making those kind of connections where the energy grows. So we've talked a little bit about the people. Well, before we move on, are there any other questions or things you need to go and make Whips and Things actually happen on 79th Street?
I would need to meet more intimacy coordinators and sexuality educators who have experience building their own businesses. Because that's what I'm going to be, an intimacy coordinator, a sexuality educator building my own business. So I want to meet other intimacy coordinators and sexuality educators that built their own business.
Just to learn from their experience.
Learn from their experience, you know, what they wish they would have known, what they wish they would have had done, what they are continuing to do, what they're looking forward to do in the future.
Oh, that's cool. Anybody else? We've got models, people who can be exemplars of what you want to do because they've done it. We've got folks who understand commercial real estate and building retail businesses who could help educate you on how to build a retail business and know that it will work and what does it require. You mentioned having a network or collective of sexuality educators who want to co-design the space and make sure it aligns to the goals or the high level vision that it will be a safe, sex positive space for Black and brown bodies. You also wanted to have a conversation with someone who works within the distribution business of sex toys and sexual education curriculum so that you can figure out how to get the right products, get them priced the right way. You know, those are the people you identified. Is there anybody we're missing from that list?
No, but if you are interested and we're included in that list, still reach out.
Excellent. Now you're thinking, because you don't know what you don't know, and I'm, you know, I don't know what I don't know. But yeah, so if anybody's listening and you're like, you forgot an attorney, and I would like to help, we'll share your information at the end of the episode. But
yeah,
This is what we want. Like, people who are interested in this conversation. Excellent.
Add attorney to the list.
Add attorney to the list. And accountant.
Yeah. Add to the list.
Yes. Accountant, attorney. All right. So a lot of the work we do at Speak Your Truth around these kind of ideas is helping people identify the movements they're leading. And sometimes people think of movements as being really complicated. But a movement really is only three things. It's a story about who we are as a people and a future we believe in, a connection amongst ourselves and the community to each other, and something to do, our work that we are actually doing to grow the movement. And a lot what you're doing is beginning to grow a movement to build a network of sex shops that also offer educational opportunities within Black and Brown communities. You, in the first part of the conversation, you identify the people who could help you as the leader or the initiator of this idea, right? But who are the people that the store is for? What are they like? What keeps them up at night? What are they interested in? Why would they be coming to you?
It is for people over the age of 18. And they're for people who are curious. I want people who are curious in the space and people who are open to learning and who are ready to have a conversation about their sexuality, specifically if they are Black and or brown. And it's specifically the piece of you're ready to be open and talk about your sexuality. Because, there are some people who aren't open about their sexuality at all. They're like, I am blank and that is it. And there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I am perfectly comfortable exactly where my sexuality is. That's perfectly fine. And that space might not be for you. You might want to buy some toys. You might want to experiment with some things. But if you're like, I don't need a class, then that's fine. Right? But if you're like, oh, I've always wanted to do this, but I just didn't know how it worked. Or, oh, I've always wanted to try BDSM or be in the world of kink, but I wasn't entirely sure how safe it was, or if I could do it with my medical condition, or if I could do it with my trauma. How do I do it without being triggered? This space is for you.
That's huge. Let's restate that again. I think that's important. This is for people who've always wanted to, but didn't have a safe space or a person to talk to get it.
Yeah.
And maybe felt like a little modest, didn't want to search on Google, right? Didn't want to put that in their browser history at work or whatever. I get that, right? But this is for someone who's curious, someone who has an interest, who's been maybe shallowly exposed to these things, and popular media, 50 Shades of Grey kind of content, right? But they want to know where they can go. I think there's something important missing from there, though. They want to go somewhere where they see themselves.
That's
Is that fair?
Say. It's even for people who have also actually immersed themselves in it. You have Googled every single porn in the world. And you have looked up every single video. You have read every single article, but you never saw a Black face.
So I'm gonna nudge you.
Okay.
I'm gonna nudge you. When we have big ideas, it is often a desire to show the value of the big idea by how many different people it matters to. But the problem is, as we add on more and more fringe groups at the beginning of something, we dilute the power of what it is. The first movement of this is not about the middle people, the lukewarm people, the side adjacent people. The first movement is about the passionate people, the people who love it. So as we talk, define the people who are going to love it. Define the people who this is for in that first wave. I'll give you an example. Like when Elon Musk started Tesla, he always knew he wanted to get to a place where there would be an affordable electric car for everybody in America at some point. But nobody was funding that. In order to get off the ground, he had to create the sexy, sporty roadster that was for an elite group of buyers, because they would be the innovators who would overspend for that. They would spend 120 grand on the first electric vehicle, right? And then from there is how you grew. Not saying you need to make a luxury store, but there's a distinction between someone who's curious and someone who's already 100% in this world, right?
Well, when I say they're 100% in it, I mean there are people who have done all the research. They've gone as far as Googling so on and so forth, but they never actually went as far as to do it because they never saw people like them. That's once again goes back to the ostracizing element of oh man, that looks really fun. That looks like something I want to do, but I never see any Black people doing it. So I'm is there really a space for me to do it?
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a gradient on the curiosity spectrum.
Yeah.
Someone who's an entry level. let's make a choice. This person sounds more specific to what you want. You don't want somebody who's in the education phase who's just nudging. You want somebody who's on the precipice of action, but the space for them to take action has not been created.
No, like what you said, I want people who are curious, but curiosity looks different.
We got to get it down to a group, though.
Okay.
Here's the reason why.
Okay.
Because as we're talking about this, one of the first early marketing things you could do for yourself is just reaching out and posting for people to have one-on-one conversations with you about this. And if you define that demographic, you can get from them the information you need to launch the first store. But if you do that activity and it's too broad, you run the risk of it not being specific to a key constituency that will be the first people to buy. Because what you're looking for when you start something like this are those first people who are going to buy whether it's good or not, right? The first people who just get it and they believe in it and they love it and they're like, I'm with it, I'm going to buy. Like if your first product is just one product you're going to sell through a website, with the goal being the proceeds of this website will pay for the attorney that will help us buy, the real estate broker to help us find the store. You need people who are buying that product because even if the product sucks, even if the product has a crazy margin, right? You're selling a 50-cent, dildo from Temu for $80, right? Okay. Right? Because that's going to get you the resources you need to build a store. So when we're thinking about this initial group, we're thinking about the most innovative person. Like if you think about it being normally distributed, only about 3 to 5% of the population are going to be true innovators. These are people who bought a DVD player when it was $1,000 and nobody else could afford one and they didn't have a TV for it, right? That's what you need when you're starting, the innovators. And then next to them, you have early adopters, the people who watch the innovators. But you need to figure out who those people are who are going to give you, if you could identify 1,000 people across the country or in Chicago who want to contribute $100 just to help you build the first store, you have $100,000 to start your store. That seems possible, right?
Yeah. Seems possible, yeah.
So be specific. Who's the person who's ready to take action? How would you notice someone if you met them? If somebody calls you from this podcast, how would you notice that that's the person who's in? What would they talk about? What would they say? What would be the energy?
What would they talk about? What would they say?
What would be their motivation for wanting to talk to you?
I feel like those people would also probably ask me the similar questions that you've been asking me of like, okay, so how did you get into this? So how did you get into this space? And I'll explain it. And they're like, okay, so that's how you got into it. But they're like, so there wasn't any like shame attached to it. So does that mean that you want to do this or you like this or you're into these things? Like people are like, so what are you curious about then? If you're like a sexuality, like that means you know it all. I don't know it all. I'm still learning every day. Right. So they're like, so what do you still find fascinating about it? Why are you still interested in it? Why do you keep wanting to explore this topic? I would imagine like people like that who ask me those types of questions would be people who want.
Why would they want to explore this topic? Why do they want to go down this path?
Yeah.
Because these are people like you.
Yeah. Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Why? Okay. I might have to think about that a little bit more.
Oh, this is a podcast. You got to shoot from the hip. You got to shoot from the hip. Just say it. Just say it.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is we're creating a space for people who hear that and go, I'm that person. I'm that person. That's who you want to join a movement. I'm that person. Right? So who is that person? Who's the person who's going to be there, opening day for Whips and Things on 79th Street and be happy and proud? And what's going to motivate them to be there? Why are they going to care about that store? Why are they going to join you and do the work?
I think those people would probably be the same people who, growing up, they probably saw somebody else being called fast or being chastised by somebody else for expressing their sexuality, however they wanted to express their sexuality. So it made them hide their own sexuality.
Yeah.
So people who may have experienced some form of sexual repression, and as they got older, they're like, I don't want to be repressed anymore. People who actively choose not to be repressed.
People who actively choose not to be repressed.
Yeah.
Yes. People who've been shamed by the things that they desire, even though they're willing and open to pursuing them in healthy and consensual ways, That's the only thing we care about, right? Is like, as long as you don't hurt anybody and do something without consent, that's the line, right? But we're open.
Consent first always. And then these next ones are going to go really fast. No incest, no animals, and no children. It's very simple. It's very simple.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Consent
first. No incest, no animals, no children.
No
it's
incest,
very simple.
So we just do those things. Everything else is on the table. So these are people who've been made to feel ashamed of how they feel and what they're looking for. They're people who've been judged. You know, and maybe it sounds like we're making a small divide. Because the thing is, the person who's already done the work to come out of this will probably come anyway. But we're saying we're starting off with the people who their response to that has been repression. That's a key line, right? You've been made to feel ashamed. You've been judged. You've been you know, maybe even disciplined in some cases by authority figures in your life, and that has led to you being repressed and not living your life in the way that you really want to.
Yeah.
And Whips and Things is for you. And we're putting it on 79th Street. We're putting it in the heart of a Black community on the South Side of Chicago, so that people in that community have access to that space.
First location is on 79th Street. First location.
Yeah.
Would love to see it in South Shore too. Would love to see it in Inglewood. Love to see it in Marquette Park.
Yeah.
You know.
But not the West Side, huh?
I'm not familiar with the West Side. That is my fault.
So we need a person from the West Side
we need
who
someone
also
from the
cares
West
about
Side.
this work to identify which communities on the West Side would be ready for Whips and Things West Side connection.
I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm a true child of the South Side.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I think, you know, it's foolish to be something for everybody, but you know who your target is, and invite people who can expand, right? Because also, you know, this thing is across the country. Maybe there's people in Memphis. Maybe there's people in Jackson, Mississippi. Maybe there's people in Arkansas who also have this need.
Yeah. Would be nice if somebody from Slauson, because I live in LA now. Yeah. Somebody from Slauson, somebody from Crenshaw.
Because there's not one in Slauson.
No. Wow. Like, it's specifically Black and brown areas, and that's like across the country. You usually have to go to a sex shop that's in a predominantly white community.
You know, when we talk about this, I would love to invite some like scholars on this conversation with you, because there's got to be some sort of connection between our lack of access to sexual education and exploration opportunities and like the sexualization and stigmatization of Black people's bodies in general.
Yeah.
You know, like we're given this label of like Black men being predators, you know, Black women being fast or overly sexualized, and the way media uses our bodies. And then we're denied spaces, you know. There's got to be some connection to that.
Even the archetypes, Jezebel, Sweet Thing, the Young Buck, like we're constantly over-sexualized, even BBC. Is it BBC?
That's one.
Yeah, right? Just constantly over-sexualized, fetishized, and then we don't have any like access to spaces where it's actually safe for us to explore our sexuality.
And that might come from the community side too. Because the community may not want it because they don't want to further that narrative. But the only way to get rid of that narrative is to expand the narratives we have access to. You know, something I'm very, go ahead.
Once again, why it is dangerous, genuinely, that Black and brown people don't have more safe spaces. You know, especially when it comes to kink and BDSM.
So when you say dangerous, are there particular stories or things you've heard about that have led to some adverse situations for Black folks because they didn't have these things? Or are you talking about more high level, like it's just like a general emotional well-being kind of thing?
Both.
You want to share so people can understand?
Those aren't my stories to share.
Got it.
That's the
Got it. Got it. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth furthering that conversation. And if folks out there have those stories, those are also people you need on the list who are willing to share their stories.
You know,
because those stories will also communicate the need for the space.
You know, because you know there are like parts of kink and BDSM that does involve higher stakes than like what we're showed or what we're introduced to. And just like higher levels of understanding and Black people being put in certain situations where they're like, oh, I don't want to participate in this part of BDSM. And then they're challenged on it because they're like, oh, you don't want to participate in that part of BDSM, then you're not really into kink. Then you're not really into BDSM. And I'm like,
are always trying to tell you who you are. It's like, well, you should stop. Leave me alone.
I'm like, that's really not fair.
It's not. It's
you
really
know,
not.
Especially because that means now I can't have boundaries. You're actively trying to take a boundary away from me. I'm a big fan of boundaries.
Yeah.
I think everybody should have some boundaries, right? and you're actively trying to take that boundary away in the name of this certain BDSM or kink thing, that's not fair. That's not right. And actually literally goes against the idea of BDSM. And yet it happens to Black and brown folk in the BDSM space so often. This
is a big idea in general though, but I feel like people have the highest level of values and then just fail to create them, and they diminish the value, you know? Like if you just were actually living up to what BDSM is, then there would be no issue. But because we all have our isms or our backgrounds, like we reduce things to these things. So we're almost at our time. And we got 2 more things to get through in our conversation. First of all, this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Nice.
How's it been for you?
I've also enjoyed myself. I was really nervous going in.
Okay.
But I'm doing good.
I think you're doing great. You're doing great. This is the first time we've done this with a person who's trying to dream of an idea. So I wasn't sure this format would work, but I've learned a lot about what you want, and I feel like it's interesting that the kind of people you need help with. So the next segment we like to do here is around pursuing your life purpose. Because big idea work is really about purpose work. You know, there are things that we're drawn to that are hobbies, that are like distractions, but then there are things that, like one of our guests, Jamal Cole, said, if it wakes you up at 4 a.m., you know, like you got to do it. And I think sometimes we're afraid to pursue those things because they seem so hard or difficult. In you opening the store, there's a lot of steps between today and the store opening at some point. But where do we find the energy to do that? And I think part of that is if you believe it's your purpose. Okay, so these 4 questions, you just have to answer in the affirmative or no, like yes or no, right? They're yes or no questions. But if you can answer affirmatively to all 4 of them, then it's a sign that, you know, you may be on your life purpose. And if you can't yet, it shows you maybe where you need to start doing your work.
Yeah.
Right? So first question is, does the world need this, what you want to do?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you love it?
Yes.
Are you good at it?
Yeah.
Can you make money doing
it?
I mean,
we just spent an hour talking about it. I really hope.
It felt genuine. If you said yes, it felt genuine. You really believed it. You're right. This is for you. And the last one, can you make money doing it?
Yes.
It's your purpose. How's that feel?
Oh, that feels good.
It feels good. So don't be afraid. Go ham.
I was nervous. I was going to say yes, but I could confidently say yes.
Yeah. So go ham. Give your heart to it. Like don't give a half measure. You know, life is short. If you have a big idea and you really believe in it, talk to people about it. Increase the pool of energy. Make a list of you have this on video now, but like make a list of these questions that you don't have answered and just start knocking them off one by one. A lot of people want to start with like a website or logo because they feel like that's a real thing. But like the website or logo can come at any point. Answer the hard problems. Yeah. You know, pursue the hard problems. How much money do I need to open a retail space? How much money do I need to fully stock this place? Do I have a community? Is the community I want to put this in? Is there actually a community there for that will use the store? Yeah. Right? Market research. Like do the business work. And I think if you start, that work costs nothing, it's just free time. Free time and energy. And then hopefully this conversation, recruit more people to that. And you start having access to information and knowledge, and it grows. And it can grow quickly, it may grow slowly. But do the work, it's worth it. I think the world needs a place. I think the world needs a place for Black and brown people to have safe, sex positive spaces. Especially given the things we talked about today, you know, the way Black bodies are perceived, history and ritual and tradition in this country towards Black bodies. I think both of us growing up on the South Side of Chicago, you kind of have a weird perspective of the world because we grew up in a Black community. And then you leave and you realize that Black people are not everywhere. Yeah. You're in a class and you're the only one. You're at a restaurant and you're the only one. It's like, how am I the only Black person at this restaurant?
Listen, I grew up on the South Side, born and raised on the South Side, then moved to Philly and lived in North Philly for 4.5 years. And then I moved to LA and I was like, oh, this is completely different from the cultures I grew up in. Yeah. Completely different.
It's a different experience. Yeah. And you don't know that pressure until you feel that, when you feel alone, when you feel isolated. And if you're navigating these huge identity questions around sexuality, it's a huge boon to be able to do that with people who you have shared experience with, shared culture with, shared narrative with, right? Not saying it's limited to that. That's a good starting point. There's a value in that. Yeah. Cool. You want to restate your big idea one more time for people?
It is dangerous for there not to be more sex positive spaces in Black and brown communities.
And you want to create what?
A sex shop that also offers classes and workshops to Black and brown people in their communities so they don't have to travel to predominantly white areas. And I wanted to be a collective, thank you again, Tom, of sexuality educators leading that.
And why does the world need this?
The world needs it because Black and brown people deserve to feel safe in every single environment they're in, whether that be home, whether that be work, whether that be school. They also deserve to feel safe in the sex that they're having and the way that they're exploring their sexuality.
Oh, that sounds so dope. That sounds so dope. I hope you write that down. That sounds great. I mean,
I was like, it's recorded.
It's that simple though. Like you're just speaking from the heart, and I think it hopefully. So like as we wrap up, if you want to talk to people directly, just if people are out there who heard Hann's conversation and you're in this industry or you want to help or you believe in this big idea, the need to create sex positive spaces for Black and brown people within their own communities, how can they connect with you?
So I am on Instagram at.
You should tell them.
I'm on Instagram at _ Hann, Hann, Mac, MAC. That's the primary form that you can reach out to me. I'm also on LinkedIn, Hann McEwen on LinkedIn. Yeah, those are the two primary ways that you can reach out to me.
All right, dope. So we're going to put it out there for you guys now. Like Hann's taken the chance to come out publicly and talk about her big idea, to share her passion for her heart for it. If any part of this conversation resonated with you, if any part of this conversation sounded like your lived experience and you want to be a part of this work, we're going to encourage you to reach out to Hann directly, to maybe set up some time to talk with her one-on-one and just talk about how you can help and what ways you have expertise or knowledge she's missing to take some of those early next steps. Would that be dope?
Yes.
All right, we'll see. I don't know. We're going to put it out there. We're manifesting now.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This is great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Jelani.
Awesome. All right, so that's episode 7 of the Speak Your Truth podcast. We are SYT. You can follow us on Instagram at We Are SYT. The podcast streams currently on YouTube at We Are SYT20. And you can learn more about the organization at wearesyt.com. And if you would like to come on the show, go to the website or follow us on Instagram and just send in just message us to let us know you're interested. Earlier, we focused on people who were, 5-10 years into their big idea, because there's a lot to learn from people who've done it. But Hann is our first guest in a slightly new format. We're also going to be looking for people who have a heart or a passion for an idea and want the opportunity to talk about it in community and see if they can, attract like-minded people to help them get it off the ground. Thank you guys for coming.